Hey, it's Scott. And for this week's Give Me Five, Nina and I are out west, specifically here in Salt Lake City, Utah, at the Great Salt Lake. And as we were here, I wanted to go ahead and do a very quick impromptu Give Me Five when it comes to the whole idea of drowning, otherwise known as submersion injuries, but specifically when it comes to the whole idea of salt versus fresh. And why this comes into play is many of us were taught in school, remember that if you drown in the Great Salt Lake, that, to no surprise, that's salt water. And as you have salt water in your lungs, that fluid is going to flood into your lungs to try to dilute the salt. And you're going to go into pulmonary edema. True. Versus if you drown in your backyard swimming pool, that's fresh. And remember that we were taught in school that if you drown in fresh water, that it messes up your surfactant and you get ARDS, stiff lungs, can't breathe worth a darn. True. Moral of the story, at the end of the day, do we do a single thing different? And the answer is called no. That's important. Because at the end of the day, what kills you is that little matter called you're floating, not breathing. So with that in mind, salt versus fresh, get over it. Both of them are seriously going to mess you up. But what really was kind of interesting is a couple weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast specifically on drowning. And they were talking about salt fresh, near drowning, all the different terminology. But really what I came away with, which honestly was really kind of neat, was the whole idea. They're like salt fresh. Either way, your endotracheal tube is going to be filled because they just have pulmonary edema. And you're just going to have an unbelievable amount of fluid, secretions, etc. And what they really wanted to push in this podcast was one simple thing, and that's called PEEP. And if it's not PEEP, it's more PEEP, followed by more PEEP. And their rationale was you can try to suck all these secretions out all you want. All you're going to be doing is taking them off the vent and not allowing oxygen to actually make it downstream where it needs to be. And they're like, sucking at all the secretions is nice, but it's really not going to help the situation. And they're simply salt fresh if you're having a hard time with SATs. It's PEEP, followed by PEEP. And if that's not working, you know what? You probably need a little bit more PEEP. So whether it's fresh water, salt water, end of the day, with few exceptions outside of the laboratory, it really doesn't matter. You're floating, not breathing. And suctioning is good, but if they're really having a hard time keeping their SATs up, PEEP is where it's at.